go ahead and get started. So I'd like to start off by saying good morning and welcome for those that are joining us today. Thank you for attending. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to join us. As a quick note, all participants are muted, except for the panelists that will be presenting today. You can communicate with our moderator, Lisa, and or myself, and submit questions via the chat button into your GoToWebinar chat dialog box. You'll see that on the bottom. You can pop over a question, and then we'll answer those questions at the end of the presentation. So a quick introduction of today's speakers for you. We'll start off with Lisa, who is on the sidelines here. She's a co-moderator with myself and senior account executive and equipment expert based in our headquarters here in Detroit, Michigan. John Newman, our inventory control and warehousing expert, as well as president of BCC Distribution. Mr. Gary Brewer, director of professional services and senior software engineer based in our satellite office west of Denver, Colorado. Roloff DeVries, senior software engineer based in our satellite office outside of the Cleveland metro area in Ohio. Myself again, Nick Daw, senior software sales account executive based in our satellite Chicago office. And we may have an additional guest later today to talk to the portion of our latest technology and rugged PDA printing equipment when we get to that section. So with that said, let me give you a quick update about this webinar series. It's a three-part webinar series to illustrate BCC Distribution's approach to using modern barcoding technology with SAP's IM, WM, and EWM environments to improve accuracy, visibility, and to add simplicity to your inventory control system. This webinar series is specifically designed to take you through a behind-the-scenes tour of materials going through a full life cycle of an SAP inventory control system. And we'll be touching on the technology, we'll be touching on the architecture, as well as the system functionality in this presentation. The reason our webinar series has been broken up into three parts is to allow our team to dive into the specifics and illustrate actual customer case study style examples, including real demonstrations as asked for by many of the participants that have joined us today and those that were surveyed earlier this summer. So about the webinar, a little bit more about today's specific agenda, part two. BCC's recent webinar, part one, back in October, which was recorded and is viewable on demand if you wanted to see that, was focused on receiving, labeling, and put away, and introduced the participants to our Train ASAP solution. Part two today is a presentation designed to provide today's participants with a better understanding of performing production counts and finished goods automation, including label printing, picking using license plates and storage units or SUs, leveraging automatic print and apply to speed up and automate fast-moving labeling processes, making inventory inquiries quickly and easily using a mobile RF terminal, and we will also provide those that are attending with an additional information about the latest barcoding equipment. Specifically, as you see here on our agenda, it'll start with a brief introduction to BCC Distribution and our Train ASAP solution. Again, we'll get into production counting, including printing labels for identification of finished goods, including put away, picking for delivery using license plates and SAP storage units, examples of print and apply, with some video examples that are pretty cool that will show you how that technology works. Using mobile RF terminals, again, each of these has its own custom little demonstration video, but using mobile RF terminals to make on-demand inventory inquiries to find materials and those locations where the materials reside. And lastly, we'll wrap up with a preview of part three of our webinar series, including some questions. But hang around for that. So assuming we have some time, we'll take all the questions that we get, whether it's for our technical team or our sales team, or specifically about something that we showed or maybe did not reference. Okay, quick introduction to BCC Distribution. So BCC Distribution, Inc., which we'll call BCC or BCCD today, we're a certified SAP software developer, a systems integrator, and data collection solutions provider. Again, we're headquartered just outside of Detroit in Canton, Michigan, and we've been in business for just over 23 years. BCCD has in-house SAP technicians with over 50 years of cumulative SAP RF scanning, and data collection experience. BCC Distribution is a premier partner and certified Zebra partner with Zebra, aka Motorola, aka Symbol, for over 17 years. And we are an SAP user, an SAP partner with our own SAP namespace, and offer SAP certified software and services. BCCD integrates RF scanning and data capture technology, enterprise printing, and RFID with your company's SAP ERP software to deliver turnkey, directly integrated AIDC, which is automatic identification and data capture systems, to reduce costs, to increase profits through time savings, improved accuracy, error reduction, and having real-time inventory visibility. Combine BCCD's over 200 pre-configured Train ASAP transactions with the equipment that meets your physical requirements, the software that optimizes your business process, and our services for a complete, native, directly integrated SAP-based RF scanning and barcode printing system. So with that said, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. John Newman to tell us more about Train ASAP and our approach to designing each and every system to be the right solution for your specific application, your environment, and your business needs.
Thank you, Nick. I appreciate it, and we'll make this part go relatively quickly and get to the real meat of the picking, packing, and production transactions. The core to our system is what we call Train ASAP, which, as Nick said, is a SAP certified deliverable. Train ASAP is what we call our 200+ canned mobile transactions that we've developed for SAP, what we call within the four walls, for the IM module, the WM module, the production module, etc. Our transactions are for data collections and barcode scanners, as well as transactions for printing. In many of our solutions, we just do mobile printing from specific transactions, like receiving, like picking, etc., etc. There is no middleware in our solution, and that's the reason why we are SAP certified, because we utilize SAP's direct connectivity, be it console, which is Telnet, ITS Mobile, which is web browser, a Fiori-based solution, as well as a combination. So we do have customers that have console and ITS mobile transactions running at the same time. We do migrations of our console transactions into ITS mobile, which is another reason why we can have a combination. The software is about programming on the SAP server, and we use the same programs for console or for ITS mobile. As we'll see here in the infrastructure screen, this is just a quick example of what we call direct connectivity. The software, all of the software specifically with ITS Mobile is all on the SAP server. We do not care where it is. It could be local, it could be hosted, it could be HANA, it could be S4, it could be ECC, it could even be less than that with the R3 4.6 and above. We do not care. The SAP software that we've created will work with all of those environments. The software is on the SAP server, and as long as we have access points in the areas that we are trying to do data collection, and it's connected via the internet to SAP, we now have a live solution. The RF scanner needs to have either a Telnet client on it or a web browser client on it. It communicates directly to the access point, to the SAP server interactively. So it is direct with no middleware. You'll notice on the top there's some printers. You do the same thing with the printers. As long as these printers have a wireless radio in them, they will also communicate interactively directly to the SAP server. The next screen shows that we have about 200 transactions that we have already mobilized and canned. And these are SAP transactions from the LTs and the MEGOs and the multitude of movement types. We have canned these up, but what you'll notice today with the transactions that our technical prowess will be demonstrating, they all will be customized to match how each customer has their SAP implemented and how they want the screens to look. So even though it is canned software, you'll notice we use the word customization because we do customize all the transactions that you are looking at. Before we customize or deliver the solutions, we always start off with a blueprint, and that blueprint will take a look at a customer's physical environment. Do we have refrigerators or freezers? Do we have tall racks where we need to scan a long ways? The technical environment, specifically what type of SAP and other type of technology do we need to utilize? The functional environment, the business process environment, and do we have some compliances regarding vendors and customers that we need to take advantage of? And we look at all of those items and all of those characteristics when we put together the blueprint. So it is perfectly customized to each customer's requirement and needs. So with that said, let's get to the good stuff. We're going to start off with what we call the production transactions. And again, this is going to be catered to a finished good type of barcode scanning, barcode printing. There are multiple ways to do this, be it IM or WM, and it's also based on, are we batch managed? Are we serialized managed? Are we doing HUs and SUs? We've come up with a couple of examples that both Rulof and Gary are going to review today, utilizing some of the specific items that we use for these two clients. So with that stated, I would like to introduce Gary Brewer. He's going to start off with the production transactions. You'll notice that we've got two pieces here, which is the first is a custom transaction that we kick off the production orders with. And then the next piece will be the BCCD custom production order receipt transaction with material put away. And before Gary actually moves forward, I always get the question, especially with WM, John, why would we go with your transactions opposed to the WM mobile transactions that come with SAP? And this is where I want you to concentrate. The reason why is that we are doing much more with one, the way that we've customized our transactions. So you'll see here, just with the finished good transactions, one of BCC's transactions combines 3 transactions at the same time. And we let the computer system move the data to the transactions, to the database behind the scenes, so we don't have a material handler go through every single screen. So you'll notice that on the custom production order receipt transaction with material put away, it's really one of BCC's transactions that's actually accomplishing a CO15, a MEGO 101, a LT11 with an automated label print. And with that stated, I'm going to let Gary go ahead and show me up a little bit. Gary.
Well, thank you, John. Glad to be here with everyone this morning, and looking forward to making our way through the presentation here. The first thing we want to go through is the custom transaction that we put together that basically allows the customer to assign a production order to a manufacturing line, and that basically is custom from the standpoint that we're storing the data in a Z table, and then that simplifies the next transaction, which we're going to show you in just a bit, which would be the actual physical receipt of the product into the warehouse. So with that said, basically what's going on in this transaction is that they're going to be scanning or entering the manufacturing line, and then they're going to scan or enter the order number. we're going to marry the two up and store that data in the table. So here's how the transaction would flow. First, they would select the menu option for production orders. They then select the menu option for order line assignment. And with that, they actually then scan the line number itself. We show them what the line is. They validate that. They would then scan the order number. When we scan the order number, at that point, we're pulling the order number information in about what product it is we're creating, a material description, and you'll also see the order quantity of, in this case, 800, and there is a remaining quantity of 800. So this order hasn't even started yet on the line. And they have the ability then to come back in at a later time if they need to switch orders. Maybe mid-run, they may determine that they get a hot order in and they need to switch the actual order on this line to something else, and they have the ability to do that all through this transaction. So once they've confirmed the information, they would actually then click on the F1 Post button, and they get a message indicating that the order assignment has been added, and now they're basically done. Okay. Now that we have an order assigned to the production line, we're going to go through a transaction now that we put together, which basically does a bunch of chain transactions in SAP, as John mentioned. So specifically here, we're going to be doing a confirmation of the order, MIGO receipt of a movement 101. We actually generate a label, and then we actually do the LT11 TO confirmation for the put-away side. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and work our way through the transaction here. First thing they would do again is select the menu option for production. They then select the order receipts menu option. And here we're prompting for the printer. And this implementation specifically, they had the option to have different printers at their receiving line. So specifically, this driver would be entering their printer, or basically how we have it set up is they actually have a barcode on the printer, and they just simply scan the printer. We validate that it's indeed a valid printer in the system. They scan the hanging placard over the end of the line. And as you can see, it pulls up the information about what we stored for that order on that line assignment. So now the forklift operator doesn't need to know what order is running on the line. All they know is they're receiving pallets off the line and going to be putting them into the warehouse. So we're showing them the material number, what should be there, what the order quantity was, what the remaining quantity is. We're now then validating that they're going to be receiving the correct material off the line. So we want to make sure that we don't have a scenario where maybe there was still some leftover product from the previous run sitting on there that they're picking up. So we want to make sure that what they're picking up and receiving is indeed the correct material for this order. So they would simply scan or key in that UPC number. And now we're showing them the default pallet quantity. So for this material, it's 52. And now you'll see that we're then prompting them for the number of labels that they want to print. In this case, for this customer, they specifically wanted 2. They're going to apply a label to the front of the pallet and to the back of the pallet, specifically covering a scenario where they have flow-through racks. So when the pallet or the fork operator needs to pick up a pallet to put it away, obviously they're going to be putting this pallet into the back of the flow-through, and they need a barcode to pick it up and move it there. But then when it comes time to pick it, they want the barcode label on the front side of the pallet so that it's there and available for the person picking up the product from the front side of the flow-through rack. So again, they're going to be printing 2 labels in this scenario. They accept the default, and they go ahead and post. So what I want to point out at this point in time is that the system would have actually then done the CO15 order confirmation of 52 cases. It's also done the MIGO Movement 101 receipt, and we've got a material document here indicating that everything's posted and correct in SAP. They acknowledge the message, and now you'll see that we're actually being directed to put this product away. So what's happened in the background is that SAP has actually created the transfer requirement. That transfer requirement's been converted and created a transfer order. And we found the transfer order in the system, and so now we're automatically jumping into another transaction that we have on the RF called TO confirmed by Q. It's located that transfer order, and it's basically telling the user to take this product, the 52 cases, to the storage bin 1609B. So again, it's going to confirm that they have the correct product, because they actually can do this as a separate step in the RF. If they basically had too much product that they're trying to get off the lines all at once, they could have set the pallet aside and come back to it later to do the put away. So again, we're validating, making sure they have the correct product. It would simply scan that again. We're going to validate that what they did pick up did indeed have the 52 cases on it. They would key that in. And now we're going to validate that they're at the correct bin location. So as a sample here, I'm going to show that what happens if they try and put it in the incorrect bin. So I scan 1608B, they get a message. The bin is not allowed. They're not allowed to put it in the incorrect bin. And so now we would actually then direct them, and they would enter the correct bin, and we get a message then indicating that the transfer order item has been confirmed. And with that, they're done, they're back and ready to receive the next product off the line. So now what we want to do is actually go through and confirm that what we had received is actually in SAP. So we're going to simply just go into the order here in CO03. Again, from the SAP side, we would put in that order. And here you can see that we actually have that order, which was for the 800 cases. And you'll see that we just delivered the 52 cases. So of that, we now have an order in the system and delivered quantity, and they would continue through that process until that order is completed. So a quick recap, basically just, again, we've set this up so that the production orders get assigned to a line, and they have the ability to change that at any point in time. If they need to swap orders out in the middle of a run, they're able to do so. And again, the forklift operator then has no worries about what order is running or whatever. They simply just drive up to the end of the line, scan the placard hanging over the end of the line, which indicates that line number. The system retrieves the order information and figures out what the default pallet quantity would be. They simply accept that, or if they're near the end of a run, would put in the different quantity, and then have the ability to print the labels and then put it away.
Thanks, Gary.
Sure.
All right. Thanks, Gary. Yeah, are you going to please pass the controls back to me if you don't mind? I'll see if I can actually I'll request that from you. So, pardon everybody, we're tossing the presentation back and forth. Yeah, thank you for Gary for that piece, and thank you for the recap of the transaction functionality. And I just want to remind everybody that while these transactions are developed specifically for this application and are combined and delivered together, these are transactions that can be delivered specifically for your application. Again, like John mentioned before, is pre-configured for SAP. They can be delivered individually for what your specific need is. What's that? Yeah. Hey, Gary, can you toss the presentation controls back to me, please?
I got it.
Or Lisa's got it. Okay, there we go. All right. All right. Just getting, oh, and one thing that we missed there is I wanted to show everybody that this here is an example of what the label generation looks like that Gary was showing in that transaction. When he selected the printer and he selected the quantity, these are just two examples for these scenarios of the labels generated. The smaller label, they're kind of in between the printer and the big label, is a material label, and then the one on the right is a license plate label that we're going to talk about in just a little bit long, just a moment here. But these are the referenceable labels that were generated as part of that process. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Roelof de Vries, and he's going to talk a little bit more about the picking transactions, the Train ASAP picking transactions. Again, like John mentioned before, these are customized transactions specific to this customer's requirements. These transactions are built for WM, and they combine functionality as shown here with the LC11, the VLO2N, and include the label printing functionality. Additionally, like what Gary showed for production on the front end for assigning a production order to a manufacturing line, which was a completely custom transaction, this series of picking transaction functionality will have that as well. The one on the end is a completely customized VLO2N with some validation functionality built in that is typically not available. Okay. All right. So with that said, I'd like to turn it over to Roelof. He's going to take control of the presentation and take us through a little bit of a behind-the-scenes tour on full pallets and case picking for WM. Roelof?
Yeah, thanks, Nick, and good morning to everyone. Nick kind of outlined the slide already in terms of what we're going to show, so I'll just go get right into it then. The first example that we have to look at is full pallet picking. The warehouse for this particular customer is organized so that some areas are storage unit managed and others aren't. And they can, when the delivery calls for it, satisfy line items by picking an entire pallet all at once. And that's managed by assigning the user to a particular picking queue within the warehouse. So let me get the demo running here. And similar to what Gary showed, the first thing that the user has to do is navigate through the menu. In this case, it's 2 levels before they can get to the picking transaction. And so the user has the ability to change their queue. You can see that kind of toggling back and forth between case pick and full pick, full pallet pick. And then they would scan the delivery number. And let me just pause it here so I can explain a little bit what's on the screen here. So behind the scenes, it has selected the first open transfer order item for the delivery that they just scanned. And it's showing what bin it needs to be picked from, the SAP material number, description. This product is batch managed, so it shows the batch, and it shows the quantity that needs to be picked. And this SU abbreviation is for storage unit number. So that label that Nick just showed you that had the storage unit license plate on it is what they're scanning at this point in the transaction. So that's validated in real time. And this customer's equipment actually will accommodate up to 2 pallets, being able to carry around 2 pallets, so they can scan a second storage unit. And so they're going to scan the license plate number off the label again. And then the transaction knows that the maximum number of pallets or storage units that they can work with is 2, so it's immediately now going into the routine to confirm each of those transfer order items. And then what it's also doing is updating the delivery. It's updating the delivery with the pick information, the material and quantities that were just picked. And it's also doing packing, which we'll look at in just a second. And then it automatically gives the user the option to print a pallet label. In this case, it's an SSCC, a serialized shipping container code label. And then as a helpful reminder, it shows them where their labels just got printed. And as Nick was alluding to earlier, we often combine what in SAP would be multiple transaction steps into one flow. So the item, those 2 pallets were picked, and what the user is seeing now on the screen is instructions as to where to take it. So they're supposed to take it now to the staging area, which is where ultimately the pallets will get loaded onto a truck. And it tells them specifically where they're supposed to drop their product off. And so the transaction just flows to this stage drop-off transaction. It's a separate menu option on the RF menu, but it flows directly here from the picking transaction, and the user just needs to confirm that they're actually dropping those pallets off in the correct location. So they'll scan the barcode label that's hanging above the area there. I think I might have paused it here. Yep. All right. So then that's the last thing that they have to do. Then they would circle back and go pick additional product. So we like to tie it off and show what that looks like then in SAP after that process has been completed. So we'll just use the standard SAP transaction for displaying a delivery, an outbound delivery. And we can see that the product was picked, and we can look at the batch splits for the pallets that we picked. They're all the same batch in this case. And then we look at the packing information. We see there's the 2 pallets that we created. So the storage units got converted into to pallets, and we're given that unique SSCC number there in the delivery. The other option, as I mentioned earlier, other parts of the warehouse are not storage unit managed, and the delivery will sometimes be set up so that the user picks cases of product instead of full pallets. And so the user is going to be starting with an empty physical pallet and building that as they complete their picks. So again, they navigate through the menu system to the transaction. Need to change the queue in this case to the case picking queue so that they're getting the right TOs. And you can see that the screen is a little bit different. It's now prompting them for material, batch, and quantity. But the first thing that they need to do is to create a unique ID for the physical pallet that they're picking. And so they print 2 copies of the picking label. It's a 1x2 inch label that has the delivery number on it and also that unique SSCC number. And they affix one of those labels to the paperwork, and one is affixed to the physical pallet. So to start building that pallet, they're going to be scanning the material and batch off that label that you saw earlier also, and then manually entering the quantity to confirm what they're putting on that pallet. So there's the second material and batch and quantity that's being put on the pallet. And again, because the equipment will accommodate it, the user has the option to start a second pallet. And they have the option either to keep that first pallet open or to close that pallet, indicate that they're done putting product onto it. And as you saw there, they have the ability to change their mind. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. But so they'll go back through and say, yep, I do want to start a new pallet. They're given the option to close the first pallet if they want to, and print a new label for that second pallet. You can see up at the top of the screen now, it shows that they're working on pallet number 2. And they would repeat the process of scanning the material batch and entering the quantity. So we'll put a couple more products on this second pallet. All right. And they can switch back and forth. So they just press the F7 switch toggles back and forth between pallets number 1 and number 2 in case they wanted to put more product on either of the pallets. And when they say that they're done, we give them a reminder because in this case the delivery wasn't fully picked yet. So just a reminder that there's more product yet to be picked. And it goes through the similar label printing screens that we saw earlier. And again, reminding them that they're saying that they're done picking a pallet, but they're still open items. And then it circles back, and they can start, they don't have an active pallet at this point as indicated there by pallet 0. And for case picks, as you might have noticed, it didn't flow automatically to the staging area. And that's because these pallets that they have just built need to go to the shrink wrapping area. So they or someone else would take them to the shrink wrapping area, They would get shrink wrapped, and then someone would run the staging transaction standalone from the RF menu, and then move the pallets from shrink wrap over to staging. And again, we'll tie that off with what that looks like in SAP. And we'll just go directly to the packing. We'll go to the packing overview, clean up the screen just a little bit. So there's the two pallets that we created, and they each have two things that were packed onto them, and it shows the material batch and quantity of what's associated with that pallet. And again, that ID number in SAP is a unique SSCC number. Then the last transaction that's kind of used in that overall flow is loading. So the product has been picked, it's been staged, truck is here, and it's ready to be loaded. So it starts with scanning the delivery, which is a barcode on one of the labels that they just printed out, so they can scan it. And then let me just pause it there for a second. This is somewhat unique. This customer needed the ability to track certain kinds of pallets, so pico pallets, for example. So they need to know how many of them are being shipped out to the customer. And so this screen is giving the driver who's loading up the truck the ability to record how many of each of these specific type of pallets are being shipped out. Then as a confirmation, they scan each of the shipping unit numbers, and they get a message that, yep, that's correct. That number belongs to the delivery that you just scanned. And they'll repeat that process for all the pallets or shipping units that are there on the dock for this delivery. And then once all of the pallets have been scanned, they'll get this message. And then as a reminder to the user that the delivery isn't fully picked yet. So there's still open TO items for the delivery that need to be picked. If all the pallets had been scanned and the delivery was already fully picked, then this transaction also does the PGI step. So again, in recap, Nick, did you want to take it back over at this point?
Actually, I think we might have a question before I jump back into the recap of what we showed, just to give some further elaboration, if that's okay with you, Roloff.
Yeah, sure.
Perfect. So a question came over that says, is there a way to skip pick lines? Example, 3 pick lines on the order, but instead of picking line 1 first, we skip to line 2 and 3 and pick line 1 last. Oh,
yeah, absolutely. I did not mention that, but there's a function key on the screen, F4 skip. So the open transfer order items are presented in a specific sort sequence that the customer requested to help route the user through the warehouse in a logical pick path, if you will. But sometimes logic doesn't work, and the user needs to select a different item. Maybe somebody else is parked in their way. And so, yeah, they have the ability to press F4 skip, and they'll just be given then the next open item in the list. And that item then is kind of dropped down to the bottom of that list, and it'll still be there.
Okay. Awesome, Roloff. Much appreciated.
Sure thing.
All right. So I took the controls back from you, Roloff, hope you don't mind. But again, just wanted to, as you just mentioned, to kind of recap what we went through there. It was pretty self-explanatory, but talk a little bit about the the custom full pick pallet picking transaction, which again is a combination of 2 transactions, which I mentioned this before with Gary's presentation. Many of these are combined together specifically for the case that was needed for that customer, but can be delivered individually as needed. But we did the full pallet, we did a case pick pallet, both with multiple transactions combined for better automation and simpler use for that operator material handler, including that ability to print labels, which I'm actually going to going to show a little bit further in our presentation. We saw a couple of minutes ago with a material label and a pallet license plate label. Roelof mentioned the SFCC case pick label, as well as the logistics unit or SFC label that is going to be assigned for that packed pallet. I'm going to show you that in just a minute. We showed some advanced functionality for multiple pallets, the ability to provide operator with instructions and feedback and allow them to physically update that information within SAP. And then obviously this is something that wasn't mentioned before. Maybe it was, maybe I just missed it, I apologize. But this is, again, designed for simplicity. It's menu driven, it's role based, it's optimized for the operator to have a very easy to use system. So I'm going to transition right now, and I'm going to try to keep it brief because we're burning through our time pretty quick here, and I've got a lot of slides. But I wanted to show a little bit about print and apply, which is automatic label printer applicators. And the reason for that is we've mentioned it a couple times here. We're talking about case labeling, carton labeling. We're talking about pallet labeling. A lot of times these are in enclosed conveying systems, and it's 24/7 operation. So an automatic printer applicator is kind of a step up from a traditional label printer that would be sitting beside or in a label room. A printer applicator gives us the ability to perform the exact same printing functionality, however it's going to a 1-to-1 ratio or it's in a quantity of X to a printer applicator to apply it directly to the product. So what I have here is a quick what and why. What is a printer applicator and why use it? And really, a printer applicator is just like your tabletop printer. There's a print engine that resides within this applicator system, and it is a full control or handling system for these adhesive labels, and they could be of any size. They could be, I've seen them as small as 3/4 by 3/4 inch for tools. I've seen them as large as 8.5 by 11 for big robotic pallets. But it's designed to take that blank label, to run it through the printer, to handle it, and then to apply it safely to a product that is going to be consistent and it's going to run a lot faster than what multiple people can do. If we have 5 people pulling labels off of rolls or off of a printer and trying to stick them on products, it's not going to perform as fast and efficiently as a printer applicator. They're built for nonstop, again, 24/7 operation, and printer applicators are often found in non-safe manufacturing areas or distribution centers and warehouses as well. Areas where there's trucks moving, there's palletizers, there's shrink wrappers, there's weigh scales. These can be rolled up or built right into the system to allow for a little bit more flexibility to allow that label to get printed and immediately applied to the product, so you know the right label is going on the right product. Some additional functionality for print and apply I have listed here. Again, I'm going to go a little bit fast, so I apologize. But it can be wired through an Ethernet connection, serial, or parallel port if you'd like to do that, and it has wireless capabilities as well. PLC Integration and Control, if you want to use a weigh scale to take input from what's in that case or that pallet before the label is generated to be a little bit more dynamic. And it also provides some I/O control, which is input-output connectivity. What we can do with a printer applicator is we can automatically apply a label to a case or a pallet, and then we can have a fixed mounted scanner that sits right beside that printer applicator that scans and reads that barcode and validates that it is readable and that it was produced and that product is moving further down the line, which gives us a little bit more sophistication with control of our system to make sure that it is correctly labeled, which is important for that data when you're trying to analyze what's being produced and what rates. It has a higher capacity to hold labels. Your traditional mobile printer can hold, what is it, about 100, 200 labels, something like that, depending on the size of the label. I don't know. I'm pointing to Lisa. But your tabletop printer can hold an 8-inch roll of labels, which can hold significantly more. But a label printer applicator, again, because it's designed for automatic throughput, can hold a 12-inch roll of labels, which is another 50% over a tabletop label printer, which means less changeover, less intervention. Again, it's built for higher print speed. The print engine that actually resides in that piece of equipment is a straight-through printer, so the labels can run very, very fast. It's variable and dynamic for the product that you're actually labeling. I'm going to show you a video on that in just a minute. We can apply it to the side, to the top. We can blow it on, we can wipe it on, which is common for wrapping around corners or putting on drums. We can do air control for large format labels. So if we're doing a chemical drum label, for example, and GHS is a very common label that go on drums, which are the ones that have color and pictograms and so forth. Well, those have a tendency to wrinkle and bubble, and they're very hard to put on drums, but a label applicator can wrap it around nice and smooth, feeding it out, controlling it with air, so that way it's applied evenly and smoothly. And we can apply in any orientation. So a human can typically take that 5 or 6 foot range and apply it to the top or the side pretty easily, but if we need to apply it to the bottom, to the front, to the back while product is moving, that's very cumbersome. So I've got a couple of examples to show you. Here is one image. The first one that I'm using is an example of a product that's high moving. In this case, it's water jugs. But what we're doing is we're printing a UPC or an expiration, or UPC and an expiration date on a label, and then blowing it on, and it's going at about 650 products per minute. So it's going really, really fast. And you can see there's 2 devices that are actually applying labels, and the reason for that is to allow us for redundancy, failover. If one machine goes down, the other one picks up and starts labeling. Or if I got to do label changeovers, I don't have to stop the line. I can just stop one, the other one picks it up, and I can keep on trucking. The second example is very similar in nature, where it has a backup machine behind it, which you can't see. The difference is this is the material. It's a film paneling material, and it's continuous. So there's no differentiation in product. So what the applicator does in this scenario is just applies labels every, I think it's a fixed duration or a fixed speed. So as that line speeds up or slows down, the applicator automatically adjusts. But what this does is applies labels in fixed segments. So when it's cut later down the production line, there's always a label on each individual product, and the products are stacked. And then when they get to where they're going, like a Home Depot or Lowe's or something like that, they just pull it off, and there's already labels built on, which is very, very efficient. This one here is a pretty common case label. I've got a couple of arrows and circles and so forth. The arrow on the bottom left is to show you the variation in depth, because not all the boxes, which you can see is empty, are the same. Some of them are narrower, some of them are shorter, some of them are longer and smaller. So what this system does is it allows, where that area is circled, a mechanical switch to apply the label to the product, which, by the way, is a license plate label, which can be used for packing that case. This one allows for adjusting to the size of the product. So we've got a label on the product every single time. And lastly, because it was mentioned a few times here, we're talking about pallet labeling and license plate labeling. Gary mentioned it in the production for the front and the back of the pallet. Roloff mentioned it during the case packing. Once it's before or after potentially a shrink wrap, it's going to get a label as well. But what we have here is an automatic label applicator. It has a little more sophistication to it. So you can kind of see on the right, as the picture is cut off, there's a taller pallet and then a medium pallet, and then they get smaller from behind. So what this system actually has the ability to do is go up and down based on the height of the actual pallet, and then put a label on the front and a label on the side automatically to allow, when the material is put away on a rack or in a storage location, if one is blocked, they can read the other label. So what I want to show here is I just want to give you a quick look at what they look like in action. So these are both pretty standard label applicators, but what this video is showing is just cases coming down a very conventional line at a very steady pace, printing and feeding a label out onto what's called a tamp blow pad. It's a zebra print engine. You can see it feeding from right to left. It feeds out, puts on the tamp pad, and then it is applied to the actual case. And now it's going to show what it looks like when it comes on. There's a little product sensor there that identifies it. You can see it's yellow on the right side. And then there could be a fixed-mounted scanner on the right side to actually read it if there's a barcode on that label as well. But that was just to give you a quick example of what a printer applicator looks like. And then I've got one more example that I wanted to show you, which is a little bit more sophisticated. This system gives us a little bit more control. So you can see apply it to the side, it's flipped, it's turned around, and then it's applied to the front and back. So you can see applied to each side, flip, turn, and now a couple more seconds of this video. Once it gets to the next label applicators, it's applied to the other side. And what this does is it positions the product where it needs to be and puts labels on all 4 sides, so that way it's easier to palletize. And again, the last slide that I have here about print and apply is that like a typical label print or a label printer that's on your tabletop, this can be integrated directly with SAP, and we'll talk more about Print ASAP in just a minute. But we like to do automated printing to speed up the process and to make it more efficient from the user interface experience. So they're seeing SAP generating a label and then the label's applied. This adds a little bit more flexibility to that because the label is physically applied as well for an automated part of the process. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get back over to Gary so he can talk and show us a little bit more about inventory inquiries for, or making inventory inquiries with an RF scanner.
All right, thanks, Nick. Yeah, we're going to go through a couple quick samples of both an IM and WM inquiries, and specifically we'll be looking at the fact that we can do IM transactions in addition to WM transactions. So we'll go ahead and move on forward here. For some reason it's not there we go. I've got it. All right. So this first transaction we're going to go through is the IM MMBE transaction. So in this transaction, they have the ability to either inquire by a source location or by a material number itself. And in either case, we're basically showing the product that we've inquired upon or what products are in that location and the actual status of the product and the quantities that are associated with them. So first we would actually go into the menu here, and in this case we're going to put in the storage location, and we show them all the different locations that it resides in, and we can go into a specific detail of that and show them that there's 109 unrestricted, number of block cases, the number of quality inspection, and so on. And so we also have the ability for this particular transaction to do an F40, which would basically show us all the locations or all the products that are in that location that are basically allowed to be there, but currently have zero quantity. So they've been extended to that storage location, but there's currently no stock there. Okay. The next transaction we're going to go through real quick is the WM version of the inquiry. In this case, we're both doing an LS24 and an LS25 in a single transaction. But I wanted to note before we go into this, there's options for additional transactions as well. So you could do an LX03 in order to find out what the empty bins are. We can do an LS27 or LS28 if you're in an SU managed environment, so that you could actually see what's on a specific storage unit, or if you want to see the storage units that are in a specific bin. This example is going to be specifically for LS24 and LS25. So we select our transaction from the menus. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put in the material number. And this happens to be the material number that we actually receipted from the production line and put away earlier. So we'll see here that we now actually can see this product that was in that bin location 169B that we receipted into. Also, something that we did on this project is in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see the F dot. Basically, that allows them to select that button, and we show them what the fixed bin location or what the pick-based bin is for that product. So if they ever need to know where they need to go to pick it from, that would show them that information as well.
Thanks, Gary. I appreciate it. We all appreciate it. This is John Newman again. We are getting extremely close to the time limit of our presentation. We're going to go real quickly through a couple of last-minute things, and then our next presentation in early January, we're going to concentrate more on the equipment and more on the printing. But we did allude to Print ASAP, which is a deliverable that BCC does bring to the table as part of our total solution. We have the ability to utilize smart forms, SAP script, bartender, all completely integrated with mobile terminals, mobile printers, GUI terminals, et cetera, et cetera. And everything that you've seen here today utilizes our integrated SAP print solution, be it printing the SUs or the license plates, the HUs, which is handling units and license plates, the logistic unit label, SSCC labels, or just case labels or material labels, or in the parts crib scenario, we can actually use location labels as well. And that can all be generated via SAP through Bartender or SmartForms or SAP Script. It allows the customers, the end users, to maintain, modify, enhance labels quickly and easily without being a programmer. And then it allows us to generate labels from any printer in the facility, on the floor, with mobile terminals, mobile printers, or tabletop scanners, terminals, printers, and PCs. Thank you very much. Again, we will go through Print ASAP in a further along seminar that we'll be doing, but this gives you everyone an idea that we have the capabilities of turnkey systems. Lisa.
Thanks, John. That was very efficient. I'm very impressed. So since we are at the kind of end of the allotted time, what we're going to do, as John mentioned, is we're going to go ahead and actually skip the equipment part today so that we have time for some of the Q&As that came over, because we all know that software drives the equipment. So it is very vital that we got through this information, and again, we will touch on it in January with the focus of some of these rugged PDA terminals and the Android operating systems on them. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into any of these questions. The first one that I had come over looks like it's going to be for you, Rulof, in regards to the RF picking. It says it looks like the transaction only supports 2 queues. Is that correct?
Oh, no. So that F4 button that I showed in the demo that toggled, in this case there are only 2 queues that were defined for picking. So instead of bringing up a list and making the user pick, the one other one that was there, it just automatically selects it for him. So it acts like a true toggle and just flips back and forth. But if they create additional queues, if they want to further subdivide the workload into additional picking queues, then when the user pressed F4, they would get a list of the other queues and they would select from it. So it's something that they can kind of enhance on their own in the future by defining additional queues without any programming changes.
Great, thank you. The next question, Gary, this one looks like it came over during your time, was for the PO receipt example, can they receive more than the order has set for manufacturing?
Yeah, so basically if the order was set for, in our example, 800 cases, we all know that production runs don't always end up being exactly what they said they were going to produce. They may run slightly over or slightly under. And so, yes, they do have the ability to receive over the amount depending on the tolerances that were configured for that order item.
Thanks, Gary. Another question that came over, I'm not sure who wants to take this one, maybe Nick or John. When do you use HUs instead of SUs?
In fact, if Rulof wouldn't mind, Rulof, can you give us an answer regarding when would be the proper time to use an HU versus an SU?
I'm prejudiced. I think you shouldn't use handling units unless you absolutely have to. Turning on true SAP handling unit management, HUM, adds several layers of complexity. I could say it'll make your project an order of magnitude more complicated than without. So what we saw here was in WM we used the storage unit management, and on the delivery, some people call those handling units, but that's accomplished without actually turning on full-blown handling unit management. So you get the ability to pack things. We only pack things one level deep. That is, putting product onto a pallet. but there are other transactions for the same customer that packs material into cases and then cases onto pallets. So we can do nested packing, all without turning on handling unit management. Maybe Gary can chime in too, because I know that you did a handling unit management project recently. And could you comment on why they needed to go with full-blown HUM?
There's just certain cases where they want to track the handling units at the IM level. So specifically, they wanted to again be able to simply scan the license plate in the HU managed inventory warehouse and be able to quickly move those products. So those are some of the main reasons you would do that, is just for the efficiency.
Great, thanks everybody for that. That was a great answer. One of the last questions I have is for the WM bin material inquiry. Can special stocks be displayed?
Yeah, the transaction, again, during the blueprinting phase, whenever we go in and do a project, we'll be identifying all the different stocks and things that are used within your facility, whether you have consignment vendor managed stock, those types of things in the different bin areas. And so we have the ability to indicate if you're mixing those stocks with consigned stock and plan-owned stock. We can basically show you the different quantities that are in each of those locations, depending on who owns the stock and what projects or different things it may belong to.
I didn't change it. And then the last question that I have here is, I think this is in regards to when we were talking about production order receipts and put away. Can the user perform put away step at a later time instead of immediately after the receipt?
Yeah. So the way this was put together is, for example, they may have 4 production lines running at full speed, and you end up having 4 full pallets all at once. Well, rather than the operator having to pick up a pallet and go put it away and then come back, and the other lines have been kind of put on pause in order for them to run their put away and come back, they can basically do the receipt, set the pallet aside, and run to the next line, receive it, set it aside. And because those labels that we're printing on and applying to the pallet, those pallet labels actually have the TO information they need. So at a later time, when things aren't as hectic, they can actually come back to that pallet, scan the label, and it will jump immediately then into the correct transfer order on the TO confirmed by Q, and then they can put those away at a later time, and it would direct them exactly where they need to go to put them away.
Great, thank you, Gary. Nick, I'm going to toss that on over to you to talk about number 3 real quick.
Yeah, so thank you everyone for attending. I know we have a couple people maybe dropping off because they have other commitments, but I just want to quickly review for those that are interested, those that participated in presentation number 1 and presentation today, number 2. Number 3, again, like we talked about, we're going to dive more into the equipment, give it some dedicated time specifically, and we're going to go into goods issues, cycle counting, mobile device management, shipping, and probably some more about the equipment functionality.
I apologize to interrupt you, Nick. We did have one more question pop over.
All right. Yeah, hit it.
One great question I think Nick was just touching on is, can we get a copy of this presentation? And Nick will be handling that. But another question we had come over said, can the picking process be configured to go straight into the load process when packing not required?
Oh, yeah, it certainly could.
Great answer.
Okay. that's good. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we can. All right. And thank you, Lisa, for mentioning that too. So if anyone wanted to see this or pass on to somebody that could not attend, I know there's people that had commitments today. The presentation was recorded. It will be posted to our channel, and that broadcast or that information will be sent out probably later this week. Again, Gary and Roloff, John, Lisa, everybody, thank you for your time in presenting, and for those that have taken time to participate in our presentation, we appreciate your time and look forward to talking to you more. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.